Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television. A quick reminder of our top stories. Presidential Election Petition Tribunal adjourns till May the 22nd to hear application from the People's Democratic Party and its candidates challenging President Buhari's electoral victory in February. Court in Kano State orders Governor Ganduje and Emir Muhammadu Sanusi to maintain status quo in respect of interim order restraining appointments of 4 new emirates. Lawmakers in the Senate screen and clear the central bank governor, Emefiele, for his second term in office. And the U.S. State Department announces withdrawal of all non-emergency staff from Iraq amidst rising tensions between the U.S. and neighboring Iran. ChannelsTV.com has more information for you, and on youtube.com/channelsweb you can find our videos. You can also watch us on your mobile device via your browser or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. Besides giving you access to news and updates on the go, the Channels TV and Channels 24 app have an eyewitness feature that you can use to share those pictures, videos, or news of happenings around you. Just install the app, then tap and swipe to reveal the menu and follow the instructions. Nigeria's inflation has jumped from 11.25% to 11.37% on a year-on-year basis and up to 0.94% on a month-on-month basis against a lower figure of 0.79% reported in the month of March this year. The report released today by the National Bureau of Statistics shows that food inflation is up 13.70% from 13.45% recorded in March, while on a monthly basis, the figures jumped significantly to 1.14% against 0.88% in the previous month. Core sub-index dropped lower at 9.30% year-on-year from 9.5%. However, the index rose 0.70% month-on-month. Urban inflation tops the chart by 11.70%, while rural index stands at 11.08%. Well, joining us now on the news at 10 is Mr. Paul Alaje, an economist, for a robust perspective on this latest release from the NBS, the inflation figures. I want to thank you so much indeed for joining us on the news at 10. The April headline, as we saw, inflation figures beats analysts' forecasts by growing to 11.37% instead of a projected decline. Are you surprised at this?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm not surprised that we're having 11.37% as against what analysts have projected. When you compare that with what we had in March 2019 of inflation figures, which was 11.25%. We're not surprised because the factors that induced inflation from 11.25% majorly was food inflation, real estate, among others. Now, when you consider what is happening to food inflation, you see that there seems to be lower production population for food in Nigeria. That may not be far-fetched from crises we witnessed in recent time, particularly crises that engulf the northwest, north central, and northeastern parts of the country. National Bureau of Statistics has reflected that in the new figures, which of course was not in line with what many persons have projected before now.
Now, the projections by the central bank, the CBN, was that inflation will start trending higher from about May to August this year. Do you see this trend continuing, and perhaps for how long?
Yes, this trend, if we don't do something, and we have two options to do. If we are to do anything about it, we either use administrative solution or we use market-driven structural solution. The crisis are still on. I'm happy government is doing so much to see how to cope the crisis, but these have not had impact on the population, particularly on the farming population, and also some other economic issues we might be battling with, which of course had resulted in inflation this time. And that is not to say there are some other indicators, part of what formed the CPI, which is Consumer Price Index, has not reduced for the month of April, but it just happened that those that have increased, that grew at higher rate, were more than those that grew at slower rate, and that is why we have we have inflation, which of course is informed from what happened to the CPI, Consumer Price Index, to be higher than that. So if we do the right thing, we take one of these two solutions. Of course, one of them failed in January in Turkey, when the government of Turkey said that administrative solution will solve the problem of inflation, but rather than doing that, it increased it. Turkey government did three things. The first one was to reduce prices and also to issue warnings to wholesalers and retailers to cut their prices, and lastly, to reduce tax. Of course, people had more money to spend. More money continued to chase fewer goods. Nigeria may want to choose that solution. I hope it works. But the proper solution I would recommend to government in the coming period is to see how to make use of market-driven solution which will cross structural balance and they have positive impact on inflation, and inflation could ease. What exactly am I talking about is to see how to reduce or find ways of bringing peace to troubled areas, particularly in the north. And we all know from available figures that the northern population seems to be engaged more in farming activity compared to the southern counterparts. It does not mean that there are no farmers in the south, but there seems to be more farming activity in the northern part, starting from Kogi up north to Sokoto to Kano, etc., even to Borno. But when we keep having crisis in this region, it's going to have impact on production of food, and production of food without which many of us might, of course, in the long run, might badly be affected. So if we can see how we can boost supply of food and also see how we can boost housing supply, among other factors that are responsible for high inflation, then we can start saying that, yes, inflation figures may match up with what CBN is expecting of single-digit maximum of 9%. Yeah, we are not yet there, but it's still better than what we had in 2016, 2017 of 18%.
I must thank you so much indeed for talking to us, an economist, Paul Alaje. Many thanks indeed for talking to us here on the news at 10. More stories now, still in security. The Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, says that he has damning proof that the spate of violence and kidnappings in the Northeast are sponsored by aggrieved politicians who lost in the last elections. In the meantime, still looking at those comments coming from him, a statement from the President's senior special assistant has also given those revelations and also moved in that direction. Let's quickly shift now to our Abuja studios, where Markwe Ogun Yusuf is standing by to take us through a couple of more stories here on the news at 10. Markwe.
Well, thank you, Gimba. The Minister for Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, is accusing the People's Democratic Party of working to sabotage the Buhari-led administration, describing their brand of politics as a threat to democracy. At separate briefings after the Federal Executive Council meeting, the Information Minister says the opposition party has shown desperation through its attack on the judiciary and similarly overheating the polity through their public utterances. He asked the opposition party to resort to the appropriate channels like President Muhammadu Buhari did 3 times when he lost previous elections.
The federal government has very strongly decried the increasingly unpatriotic and desperate opposition politics being played by the PDP and its presidential candidate, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, warning that such dead-end opposition politics could be toxic for the nation's democracy if left unchecked. And either by coincidence or orchestration, a faceless group emerges from nowhere calling for an overthrow of a democratically elected government, a totally egregious act of treason. Worse still, painting the judiciary bad for whatever reason is anti-democratic and unconscionable. Our advice to the PDP and presidential candidate is to stop beating the drums of war. Concentrate on the legal challenges by its candidate against the election of President Muhammadu Buhari, if indeed they have any faith in the country's judiciary, and desist from unnecessarily overheating the polity.
And in response to that, former Vice President Alhaji Atiku Abubakar says the allegations of treason leveled against him by the federal government shows desperation. Alhaji Abubakar, in a statement by his media advisor, Mr. Paul Ibe, he wonders why the Minister for Information would associate him with anti-democratic forces and making inflammatory statements. Well, Mr. Ibe describes Alhaji Abubakar as a man of peace and a thoroughbred Democrat who, alongside statesmen like Chief Moshood Abiola and Dr. Alex Ekweme, resisted the military and fought for the enthronement of democracy in Nigeria. The statement reads further, quote, "If anybody is beating the drums of war, it is precisely those who have issued statements threatening Nigerians and foreigners alike with body bags," end of quote. Mr. Ibe says there is more to the desperation on the part of the Muhammadu Buhari government to rope in the PDP and its presidential candidate in phantom plots than meets the ordinary eye. And President Muhammadu Buhari will be performing the Umrah or Lesser Pilgrimage in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia at the invitation of King Salman bin Abdulaziz, who is also the custodian of the two holy mosques. A statement from the President's Senior Special Assistant on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, confirms that President Buhari will embark on the journey tomorrow, Thursday, May the 16th, accompanied by close personal aides. He's expected back in the country on Tuesday, May the 21st. The Umrah is an optional but recommended pilgrimage to Mecca that can be made at any time of the year. And taking on security matters now, the Nigeria police says it's uncovered plots by some people posing as climate and environmental activists to commence coordinated attacks on oil installations across the country, especially in the Niger Delta region. According to a statement by the force spokesperson, DCP Frank Umba, these plots, which are politically motivated, are aimed at sabotaging oil installations with intended negative consequences on national security and economic development. Mr. Umba says the Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, has ordered commissioners of police nationwide, and particularly in the designated states, to intensify their surveillance missions around oil facilities and other critical national infrastructure. The police chief also wants persons or groups of persons who may want to resort to use of violence or dire consequences, as the force will not hesitate to bring them to book. When the News at 10 returns, organizers announced 29 final entries for the Nigerian liquefied natural gas prize for science. To join us again.